everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. This is Candace Marie. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Back at it with a video, guys. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into what's going on currently in the world with this Mars in Gemini setting up into a square with Neptune in Pisces. You have to forgive me. It's late here, and once again, I'm used to doing this during the daytime, but man, like the last week, the astrology has just been so wild. So I'm just trying to keep on keeping on and just keep hitting these deadlines. This might come out a little bit later in the morning than my videos have been, but life has been crazy. So hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western astrologer with an emphasis on looking at the Sabian symbols as well as tarot. I incorporate that into my work and I talk about how it all reflects off of each other. Okay, so we're going to be talking all about this Mars square Neptune. Those of you guys who've seen my Mars and Gemini video, you know that I kind of touched on this and I talked about how throughout the retrograde, we're going to actually see this square happen several times. So I'm going to start first by giving you guys the dates to be aware of, because the very first one is actually getting ready to set up here soon. If you're sensitive to the astrology like I am, if you have a chart that's ruled either by Mars or Neptune, you might be feeling this already. It's draining, y'all. It is. It's unbelievable. It almost feels like you're just like trying to carry weights underwater or something. So the first Mars square Saturn, Mars square Neptune, thinking weights, Saturn, Mars square Neptune transit is going to be taking place closer to October 11th through October the 18th. So let me take you guys to around that time. It is being felt now. And we're going to see the square perfect at 23 degrees. Okay, so this will be the first of 3 squares. Now, when Mars moves to square Neptune for the first time, Neptune is retrograde. And then as we see the second, where I think both planets are going to be retrograde, we'll take a look at that. And then the third square, which won't be happening until March of 2023, both planets will be direct. So that also kind of plays into what's going on. We have quite a few planets that are waking up this month. Pluto has gone direct, obviously, so that's new. We're going to have Saturn that's getting ready to go direct here pretty soon as well. And then, yeah, we're not going to see Uranus or Neptune station for a little bit longer. That's going to take a little bit longer for those two to kind of wake up. But still, Mercury's gone direct. You know, we've got a lot of things happening in the skies. So this first Mars and Gemini square Neptune and Pisces felt over that 1 week period. So let's kind of break that down archetypally. Basically, when we're talking about Mars, we're talking about our action, vitality, anything that deals with getting up and going somewhere, right? I always say it's like putting the pedal to the metal. Mars is striking the match, lighting the fire, getting something going, putting the keys in the ignition and turning the engine on. So there is always a direction that we're going in, or there is some desire or something that we're hoping to achieve or kind of like have victory over when we're dealing with Mars. Recently, we have seen Mars that has been in a trine with Saturn, so we've been kind of strategizing and planning. We're also going to see some really nice trines this month between the Sun and Venus and Mars, and quite a bit of harmony just in terms of being able to get support from other people. Kind of a bummer. I mean, I mentioned how, you know, Venus is going to be invisible all month long. We're not really going to start to see Venus until closer to December. And we're also seeing with this Mars square Neptune, there is confusion, loss of energy, loss of direction. I think I said in a previous video that I've noticed like 2 or 3 times I put something into my navigation in my car, following the screen, and it just keeps rerouting, and it's like it almost doesn't know where it's going. And I've gotten lost several times kind of dealing with that. So I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know if it's the Mercury square Neptune or like what, but I keep seeing that happening. So Mars in Gemini has this focus of wanting to share, move around, kind of be mobile, be able to talk, and I think like walk and chew gum, very Mars and Gemini kind of multitasking. Right now, with this square to Neptune in Pisces, okay, so Neptune is one of the rulers of Pisces. Neptune being more emotional, expansive, sensitive, psychic, it's like a sponge. When you see these two come together in a hard angle, right? So a 90-degree square is always going to talk about some kind of friction. Squares are the energy of Mars. It's when you take two different planets, bring them into this tension, and you're going to see that one of them is going to have to act. And here is what I've noticed as a result of this square, and it has not even perfected yet. I have had a number of people reach out to me and be like, oh my God, I got into a car accident. Oh my God, somebody, hit my door, or, I wasn't watching where I was going and I was rushing down the stairs and slipped and spilled coffee all over me. Lots of Mars square Neptune theme. Neptune can be anything in regards to our vision, our sight, our visibility, like when we're driving or if we overlook something. This can also deal with just our empathicness, kind of really being more sensitive. So those of you guys who consider yourselves empaths, you're more likely to get emotionally slimed with this square, especially if you are talking to people, if you are in the profession of having to like answer phone calls, respond to emails, and just talk to people, or maybe being kind of like more so in the industry of I don't even know what I would call it, customer service. That you're more likely to get people who are going to be kind of agitated or confrontational with that square to Mars. So with these squares, you have to take into consideration both archetypes, and then they come into friction with one another, and they're going to put pressure on each other. So it can go the way of Mars square Neptune, where we're exhausted, we're feeling like we have fatigue, maybe we're under the weather, we just want to sleep more or drink more or smoke more. That's very like, leave me alone, let me go back to bed Neptune. Or with the Mars square Neptune, it's going to take more of the Mars energy, which is rushing, getting a little tense in terms of communication, being a little passive aggressive, possibly also being more likely to be affected by gossip, slander, anything of that nature, because Neptune does have this kind of hidden or private kind of vibe to it. So it's going to go one of two ways. And I have seen most people responding more in the, oh my God, I didn't see that curb. Oh my goodness, I didn't check before, I sent the email, or I didn't have any visibility. I couldn't see anything. So, watch for that stuff throughout these squares. It's going to be kind of hard because Mars is already in its shadow. So Mars is actually getting ready to start the Mars retrograde closer to the end of this month. We're actually going to be seeing that set up closer to October 30th, and Mars will go retrograde from 25 degrees of Gemini all the way to 8 degrees of Gemini. A total of almost 7 months of Mars in Gemini, which is very unusual. Usually we see Mars in a sign for about 2 months, so it will be there clear until about March of next year. So we've talked a little bit about like Mars the warrior, the speed racer, the fighter, or somebody who is just really passionate and adamant about getting going. But what about Neptune? Neptune can be about hidden spaces, private spaces, scandal, illusion, hospitals, things that are lost perhaps, or things that go on behind the scenes or behind closed doors. And so I've been really trying hard because the truth is I don't have any mutable placements in my chart at all. I'm trying to really work with these transits as we, experience mutable squares and other aspects. The last 2 years of having eclipses in Gemini has been really eye-opening for me because it's created a series of inconjuncts to my personal planets, and it's made me kind of learn to appreciate the dynamic of, what Gemini does for Scorpio placements, and that it opens us up and gets us to talk and communicate and probably be more open-minded and more vulnerable, right? Because Gemini is 8th house to Scorpio. And it's been rather uncomfortable, and I've been anticipating, Mars coming into this square, is that it could be something that is a bit draining. And I've been trying to actively make more time for meditation and trying to check in and getting some insight and some inspiration specifically for some of my talks. And this was one of them that was primarily guided by what has actually come up for me in meditation. So I'm going to read to you guys some of the notes that have come up for this. You know, there are going to be some trigger things coming up here. So I guess it's probably best that I let you guys know this now, you know, stuff relating to refugees, war, anything in regards to like racial or religious issues, mental health awareness, all of that stuff. This is all like Neptune stuff. So if you're sensitive to that stuff, just a heads up, that's some stuff that we're going to be talking about. So actively taking time to really sit and think about what it is that this means. Why is it that we're going to be having the square 3 separate times? Why has this square also been factored into Mercury going direct, you know, in Virgo, opposing Neptune in a square to Mars? It seems like very rushed, or something that's not clear, or perhaps even there's a sense of impatience that comes up, or fear that's pushing us to react to something much more quickly than we should. So I've tried to slow down and like really ask my guides or whoever's out there, like, what is it that we need to be aware of? And so something that came up for me that was just very specific, and it was so simple, was not all who wander are lost. I'm sure some of you guys have heard that phrase, right? I've become somebody who's like really fond of the term wanderlust, so much so that I got it tattooed on my body a while ago, and not in one of those like silly, this is kind of trendy tattoos, but more because I really love to be present and to go places and to not feel like I have to have roots that tie me down. I spent a number of years living between a couple different cities, and I'm so blessed to have gotten to spend my 20s getting to experience all different, you know, cities in the country, and feeling like little bits and pieces of my soul have been left there. So there's something really amazing about being able to be like, I just want to be free. I just want to go somewhere. I don't care where we're going. I have Venus opposed Jupiter. I think that's part of it. And I like to wander. But the more that I sat with this and I asked, what does that mean? Not all who wander are lost. I think it's talking about those who are starting to feel restless, those who are hoping to maybe find new homes right now, those who are exploring other belief systems outside of themselves. I'm seeing a lot of clients who have kind of commented that they're losing faith. Right, they're losing faith with their belief systems, their religion, their political affiliation, their country of origin, and it's really easy with some of these aspects to Neptune to go to like worst case scenario and spiral. So I'm going to continue to encourage people to not let that be the theme of this video. That's not what this is about. It's actually more making peace with being in that place of not entirely knowing where you're going yet. And not worrying about it, right? Not all who wander are lost. Perhaps you're exploring new avenues in terms of your career, thinking about what other career you could be going into right now. Perhaps you are venturing into new religious or spiritual practices, and it may be something very different and very unusual than what you're used to doing. For some of us, it can be literally exploring and traveling and going into foreign lands, or really starting to question, you know, what is it that we are getting behind, right? What is a worthy cause? When do we jump in and be a warrior for justice or for peace? And when do we take a step back, right? So that really kind of stuck with me. Not all who wander are lost. Some of us may be feeling like we're kind of like in limbo right now, like we don't know what the next step is, and we're trying to manage anxiety, or we're trying to manage that sense of not knowing the next step, but having faith that it's going to be okay and that we don't have to fight our whole way there, right? Something else that came up for me also is building off of that theme of faith. Something that's been like a family phrase in my family on my father's side ever since I was really little. Like my dad's mom and her family actually worked for a period of time. I think it was like all throughout Asia. I believe it was either China or Japan, where they worked as missionaries, and they were missionaries as a part of, you know, a connection to the Christian faith, and they were there for a period of time. I want to say they were there for like at least like a decade or so doing that, which is kind of cool. And something that my dad has always said to me when I was younger is, this too shall pass. Obviously, really well, you know, noted and I think quoted scripture from the Bible. So much so that, you know, I don't think it really hit me until I was older. Like, I've never really been like a religious person. I love church. I love the whole theatrics of it, but I'm not really one who's fond for organized religion. But still, that stuck with me for a very long time. And it wasn't really until my Saturn's return that I found myself talking to my dad more, you know, through that process, and like talking to him about things that were going on in my life. And it was something that he said to me a lot throughout 2019 is, this too shall pass. To the point where after a year of hearing that, I finally started to realize that if I get stuck in that moment, right, of helplessness and not knowing what's going to happen and being so focused on what was crumbling in the moment, that I was losing track of the lessons that I was learning in the process. I was also losing track of where I was going and becoming too attached to the idea of being a victim, or being mistreated, or life not being fair, and oh, always me. And it really took away and drained me of any potential energy that I had to kind of like pick myself up by the bootstraps and carry on. So after a couple of months of having my pity party, working through that, and then finally really growing to love that phrase that he had always said to me, I was like, this is really important. I need to remember this. This is one of the few things that stuck with me into adulthood that's really helped me gain perspective and realize that you can't sweat the small stuff. And I think that's very Mars square Neptune. This too shall pass. You may not see it right now. You may not be able to see the forest through the trees, but eventually it will kind of dissolve and it will fade, and you'll be able to have some clarity and move forward. I went on to get that phrase tattooed on my feet. So anytime I'm going through a difficult time, I look down and I look at my feet and I see that phrase. Ironically, Neptune is feet. So right when Saturn and Neptune were being transited by Saturn, I was like, okay, I feel like I need this branding, you know? So anytime I'm panicking or I'm having anxiety or stress, I just look down and look at my feet. Sounds silly, but it works. Definitely recommend it. Some other things that came up for me, and this is just something that we have seen kind of throughout history with some of these transits, is issues in regards to like refugees. So also building on, you know, not all who wander are lost. Just given the state of what's going on in the world right now, we see lots of stress and tension in a variety of countries. People who are fighting for their freedom, whether it comes to their religion, their right to do things and not be limited because of their gender, the ability to also have self-expression, free speech, you name it. Refugees are going to be a thing. I have thought for a long time that with both Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces, not only would we see this expansion of psychic and emotional energy, but also people who were going to feel lost. They were going to roam. They were potentially looking to gain security by going and being able to relocate to other countries where they may have their freedom to practice whatever it is that they want, or not feel subjected to some of the same things that they are in their home country. So I think we're going to see more themes with that. Refugees who are trying to escape war or trying to escape harsh, realities of just what's going on right now. Scandal. We're going to see more of this. Mars does deal with sex and sex drive. We've had a Mercury retrograde in Libra. We've seen a handful of some rather shocking things that have gone on in terms of people getting caught cheating on spouses and stuff out in the media. And I feel like we may see more of this, or shock in regards to what people are doing with their money or with their resources, because Mars can represent that as well. Illusions of war, that's a phrase that keeps coming up for me. Illusions of war, that Neptune haziness, Mars being the square. I keep getting this vision of like a TV buzzing in the background of people's homes, and all you're hearing is, everything that's going on with the war here and Russia this and China that. And there's some truth to it, but you guys have to understand that Mars in its shadow has a very intentional, darker, disruptive, angry tone. And as it's squaring Neptune, it's going to be pumping that into the airwaves, onto social media, onto the news networks. We're going to be hearing more about it, and it's to get people scared and riled up. So when I say illusions of war, this isn't me saying it's not real. It's me saying to you that there is what's really happening, and then there is how it is being portrayed on the television screen. And best believe we will see all kinds of manipulation and distortion and a redirection going on with the war in Ukraine. Like, we're going to see that. That is inevitable. And the question is that, do you want to buy into the screen manipulation and feeding off of the fear, right? You have to ask yourself that, because one of the big things why this is being pumped is because it is a distraction method to distract where money is really going, how things are being spent, what's really going on in terms of rights and regulations, and there's all kinds of things that are getting ready to kind of turn over. I don't say this to be a fearmonger, I'm just telling you guys that smoke and mirrors. If you look at what's gone on over the last couple of months, every single month, especially at the beginning of the month, there is some major scandal, right? The queen dies, there's this huge storm, there's the Russia-Ukraine stuff. It's like every month there's something, and it's like this buildup. So I'm starting to wonder, we already know that the beginning of November is going to be midterm elections. So what's coming for the first week or so of October? Which leads me to you guys benefiting from questioning and asking yourselves, in regards to what you're getting upset or angry over, what is a worthy cause to donate to get involved with, to talk about online, and whose cross is it to bear? Because I think in some situations, literally with Mars square Neptune, I could see is like this crusades of people running into the streets, or, you know, arguing or defending or debating things in regards to Neptunian stuff about who should feed the homeless, who should take care of the children, whose responsibility is it to jump in and help us from some of these severe storms, who's responsible for, you know, being able to help rebuild cities, right, and things like that. So very Mars square Neptune is going to, in some ways, allow us to be more sensitive and more compassionate. Like, we can let things flow with Mars square Neptune. I could see this being amazing for writers or poets or creative writers or photographers or people who just want to get out in the street and they just want to, you know, take photos or videos, or people who just want to sit there and like channel and like write. Like, it can be wonderful for that. But for the most part, this doesn't have the best intentions, unfortunately, I think, because Mars is getting ready to retrograde. And something I keep asking myself is do I want to get involved with that? Do I feel the need to attach myself to that? Do I feel the need to be somebody who's going to say yes or no, I'm for Ukraine, or for abortion, or for this political movement, or for, you know, something going on in another country? Because there's a lot of this stuff that's coming up right now, because people are being expected to apply labels to themselves in terms of who they are and what they support, right? So that's something that I want you guys to think about. Probably a big thing also is mental health awareness. You know, this is like so significant. I've seen a really rough go the last couple of weeks with clients and with friends, and you know, with these squares to Neptune and these eclipses that are coming, like, mental health is a really big topic. If you are somebody who is struggling with mental health, addiction, if you are somebody who is suicidal, or you're having thoughts about some of that stuff, it really always should be taken seriously, regardless of what's going on in the skies. But I'm seeing more of this now, and I think a lot of it has been Mercury opposed Neptune, this feeling of anxiousness and not knowing what's going to happen, and feeling like we just need something that's going to give us clarity. We need to know how things are going to fall definitively one way or the other. And then Mars comes in and joins the square. It ends up being kind of like the agitator to like force us into feeling like we have to make decisions too quickly. Or perhaps maybe Mars is intentionally kind of moving through this sign to test some of us and see if we're going to take the bait, and if we're going to kind of just jump ahead too quickly, or be too hasty, making decisions out of fear, making decisions because we're scared or because we're believing a specific narrative without really taking the time to stop, breathe, think about it, consider the source. You know, not many people realize like we are grounded through breath. And I think so many people go throughout their life not really paying attention to their breathing. If you're finding that you're getting stressed out and you're getting anxious, one of the best things you can do with Mars and Gemini is consciously take time to stop and take 3 deep breaths, ground your energy, ask yourself, why am I responding to this the way that I'm responding? You know, can I give myself time before responding or reacting to this? Is what I'm hearing or feeling, is it really mine? Is it really my energy? Is it really my problem? Is it really my perspective? And I'm not saying this to be insensitive, but like legitimately, fear and anxiety will spread like wildfire with this square. And I think it's kind of designed that way. So that way we're either going to go in the direction of having the fear and the anxiety, or we're going to go in the direction of working with the trines that we're having currently to Saturn and the Sun and Venus. And we're gonna call a friend, basically. We're gonna phone a friend, right? Wasn't that from that Regis show? What is it? Some millionaire show, I don't remember. But some of you guys are gonna have to phone a friend, right? And be like, am I crazy? Can you talk me down? Like, what's going on? Or you're gonna have to get some advice from somebody else who can kind of help you ground some of this stuff out. And, talking to people can be helpful. Like for me, it's been like this reoccurring theme that it's been really helpful for me to talk to people about some of my perspectives, and whether it's just talking to strangers at the grocery store, or it's, talking to my hairstylist, or like whoever, and just being like, yeah, this is what's going on, and I think this is kind of crazy. And the more that I'm finding that I'm just speaking my truth and being honest about some of the things that I'm noticing about the world and what's going on and asking questions, the more I'm meeting other people who are like, yeah, I think there's something to that, like something's off here. And it makes me feel a little bit more sane knowing that like maybe it's not just me. And I try to kind of, ease it a little bit. I try not to kind of go too hardcore on the conspiracy stuff, but I have found that I'm not the only one who's asking some of these questions. And so I'm hoping that before you guys are getting your panties in a twist, you're taking a deep breath, you're asking for help. If you need help, especially in regards to mental health, reaching out, talking to somebody, getting some assistance, it's okay. That's part of the process. You're not meant to know where you're going to land right now. There's a lot of moving parts in the cosmos. Get into the vibe of going with the flow, right? And just noticing what's happening and noticing what's changing, because that's what we have to do when we're dealing with Neptune. If we're dealing with Mars square Neptune and we react too quickly, we turn too quickly, we don't have visibility, or we didn't see something coming. So watch your words, watch your actions, and above all, I think it's most important to remember that having faith right now is so important. I don't care if you have faith in Jesus Christ or the flying spaghetti monster. It doesn't really matter to me. Faith, I'm not saying should be or can be contained purely to just one belief system. There can be faith in yourself, faith in the cosmos, faith in a higher power, faith in the universe intervening, like whatever it is that you would have faith in. Having that regular relationship with that and almost giving it up to the higher power and being like, I know that you're going to direct me wherever I'm meant to go. That's where I'm going to be, baby. That's really what's going to help you kind of get through this period of time. And remember, this too shall pass. I just want to touch on a couple things. Like, some of you guys don't watch the news like me, and I've heard some of you guys say that, which is interesting. I really try not to, because I know it gets me kind of riled up. And I also know that if something important is going on in the world, I'm going to hear about it. I'm going to get an email, somebody's going to text me, I'm going to see something randomly while I'm on the internet. And so here's a couple things that I've just seen throughout the last week or so, watching these Mars square Neptune squares build. I know that some information is not factual, okay? So I'm just reading you headlines, actually. And these are headlines from major news outlets. They are not just random things that you're going to read on the internet. These have been published in major news outlets. And every single one made me go, oh, there it is. There's Mars square Neptune. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a couple examples. I'm sorry, they're not the most positive, but these are some of the ones that are kind of really showing up for me. As of earlier today, on the 3rd, North Korea files missile over Japan in major escalation. The test firing was the latest in a flurry of launches by the North. The missile flew over Japan and landed in the Pacific. What? First of all, crazy. The fact that I feel like the world is getting pushed to this point, and it's kind of a scary thing to see that, possibly we've got certain countries that are kind of teaming up that are acting kind of reckless, but that's neither here nor there. Hearing that, parts of Japan were also saying that they were being told to basically duck and take cover and prepare for some kind of missile attack is absolutely insane. But there you go, Mars dealing with acts of war or missiles or anything that lights up. and Neptune, which is unseen, something that vanishes, and also the sea. So nobody saw it coming. It's shot into the air. Everybody is told that they need to hide, and then it goes into the ocean. Very Mars square Neptune, especially in these signs. NATO believes that the Baltic Sea gas pipeline leaks were sabotage. The warning comes as the Swedish Coast Guard confirms a fourth leak in the pipeline off the southern Swedish shore, which Sweden is in the process of joining NATO. The first leaks in the pipelines that extended from Russia to Germany were reported on Tuesday, prompting energy companies and European governments to beef up security. The fear of further damage to Europe's energy infrastructure has added pressure to natural gas prices, which have already been soaring. Mars square Neptune, okay? So Neptune being gases, also under the sea, things that deal with foreigners. And then Mars, you know, something that may have been cut or messed with or severed or altered. And also Mars square Neptune, nobody knows who did it. Nobody is saying. I mean, Europe's awfully quiet about it, but we're still waiting to kind of hear like who did it and if that was something that was intentionally done to kind of ruffle Russia's feathers. Flooding in Florida after Hurricane Ian has made damage basically all the way from the Caribbean to the Carolinas. A formidable coastal storm born in the remnants of Hurricane Ian is now spinning off the mid-Atlantic coast, delivering flooding to shores already swamped by days of rain and strong onshore winds. About 30 million people in the mid-Atlantic are under some kind of coastal flood alert from the National Weather Service. Coastal flood warnings and an ocean surge of at least 2 feet are in effect through late Tuesday from basically North Carolina / Virginia all the way up to New Jersey. Not to mention the fact that parts of Florida are still not going to have power for almost a week. They had insane flooding, and just seeing like the storm surge is really crazy in parts of Florida and how the water all receded and it's going to have to come back. So Mars can be action, it can be quick, it can be swift, and Neptune can deal with water. But I think that in this situation, Mars is actually more so taking on the archetype of destruction, especially in Gemini, which is related to wind. And so as it comes into a square with Neptune and that represents the sea, obviously we have a hurricane, heat that builds up with that wind. Mars squares to Neptune, all of the destruction that we see from that. I remember making a video spring of 2021 when I was in New Orleans and they started having really bad storms, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be a crazy year. Jupiter is returning back to Pisces here pretty soon. We're going to see that at the end of the month. And so we have 2 months of Jupiter and Neptune in the same sign. I do feel like there is some really extreme weather that is going to continue for the rest of this year. You know, we see the mutable signs as stormy signs, right? So, you know, Gemini and Sag and Virgo and Pisces, they all have this very changeable nature. So it's not unusual when we see these planets that are syncing up, creating squares, that happens. We've had, you know, a Mercury retrograde, which has also been in the mix as well. Okay, so that's that. These are like 2 kind of like off things, but I don't know about you guys. I kind of like cringe, kind of like iffy about anything in regards to like serial killers. But obviously it's been a huge frenzy on Netflix about this Jeffrey Dahmer series that has come up, and I think it's called Monster. And I've noticed the frenzy about the show and how many people are almost like idealizing him, which is kind of screwed up when you think about it. If you know the story, I'm not going to get into it, it's gruesome, but I think of like, first of all, he was a Gemini, okay? Of course I looked at his chart. He's a Gemini, and he's a Libra rising, Aries moon, Saturn in Capricorn in the 4th. All my placements, by the way, I saw this and I was like, oh my God, am I a serial killer? But he had Sun in Gemini, and he had Mars conjunct his moon in the 6th house of Aries. You know, it's weird to see like this frenzy where like everybody is like talking about it and mimicking him, and like Halloween's coming and I'm seeing people like dressing up like him and doing stuff on social media. And I think this is very much the Mars square Neptune. You know, Mars can be somebody who is brutal or somebody who is capable of attacking. Many times, just in terms of like, you know, his things, there was a lot of him working with his hands. Let's just leave it at that. I don't want it to get too gruesome. Hands being Gemini, he was a Gemini. And we're seeing transits that are activating his natal chart right now, which I think is bringing attention to his story. Interesting that they kind of try to humanize him. They show his background and like what happened with him growing up and like how it led to this whole series of him basically becoming a serial killer and being responsible for killing a number of men. But I think that this is Mars and Gemini square Neptune. Neptune can be people who have issues with drugs, hidden stuff, prisoners, stuff in relating to film, insanity, psychological stuff. So, you know, seeing Mars come into the shadow and square with Neptune, it's no coincidence that I think that they're kind of putting him out there, and this has become one of the biggest shows on Netflix right now. The other side of this, and maybe this is just my opinion, okay, but because he was known for killing, you know, African-American individuals who are also homosexuals, I look at this and I'm like, are people really going to be idealizing him and like dressing up as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween? Like, how is that not extremely, extremely insensitive and also very offensive to the victims and also to just two pretty significant groups in society who probably don't take so kindly to that and are probably looking at the popularity of this show and being like, how is that even okay? Maybe that's just me. That's how I would feel. Okay, that's how I would feel. But I could also see the Mars square Neptune as like people being like, well, what's wrong with that? Like, what's the problem? You know, or like, what's the big deal? It's just fantasy. It's just a show. And a lot of people are going to be like, no, there's victims. You know, Mars square Neptune can deal with victim stuff. And then last but not least, and this is just kind of like another thing, right? Because I have noticed with like squares to Neptune and oppositions to Neptune, when we were seeing this kind of starting up here recently during Virgo season, you know, the Little Mermaid comes out. You guys saw that video I did where she, you know, the new Little Mermaid video movie that's coming out in 2023. We have an African-American woman who's portraying Ariel. Okay. Not many people realize that all of the tradition and the lore and everything that comes from mermaids, a lot of that actually comes from the Caribbean. So it's kind of strange to me that everybody's making a really big deal about the fact that we have a black woman playing Ariel, but whatever. I posted this meme, it was hilarious. It was like, I don't really care who plays Ariel, but like that lobster, is he a lobster? Or is he a crab? I don't remember, but he better really be Jamaican. And I was like cracking up laughing because I was like, why can people like just let it be? Like, it's 2022. Anyway, but yeah, I think that kind of coming off of that, I've seen a lot of issues with people who are being treated differently because of their nationality, their background, their belief system, you know, their gender, what they you know, pray or preach to. Neptune can be very much about these things. People who are considered outsiders. So as I was watching these oppositions set up to Neptune, all this stuff came up with the Little Mermaid. Okay, just this week, we see all of these photos plastered all over the internet of Kanye being spotted out wearing a sweatshirt that says, white lives matter too. Okay. What? So it's just like across the board, lots of, once again, like, you know, who's is this a worthy cause? Whose cross is it to bear? You know, I guess I understand it, having heard from a lot of people who have given me their insight and their involvement in the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm not going to comment on it. I just think it's unusual and also very Mars square Neptune, knowing that Kanye is a Gemini and I think he's got a Pisces moon. So he's like in the midst, he's like the poster child for these squares and people like reading his sweatshirt and being like, what the heck? Like, what? Like, you're a black man. Like, what are you doing? And basically causing an uproar on the internet. And a lot of people have stuff to say. Very confusing in terms of, you know, what is he fighting for? Where does he come from? What is his belief system? You know, does he understand who he is? Very Mars square Neptune. So if there's one thing that Kanye likes to do is he likes to cause a ruckus, right? So that's your kind of condensed Mars square Neptune news for the week. These are some ways that it could possibly be playing out in the world. We're going to see more of these transits. So it's not just going to be this October 11th through the 18th that you're going to see this set up. Okay, so it's going to be through the 18th. Once Mars gets up to about 24 degrees, we're going to lose that square. Now we're going to have it again, and that's going to be November 18th, and this will be when it's retrograde. So Mars will have retrograded back to 22 degrees. Notice that both Neptune and Mars are retrograde. Jupiter's back in the same sign. So it's like the blind leading the blind, basically. You know, Mars and Gemini didn't think twice before responding, or didn't signal as it was turning, or is now changing direction, changing its mind. I think that's the one thing that I've been trying to remind myself in the midst of these squares is the power of changing your mind. You can change your mind, right? You can get up and go at it a different way every day if you need to. If you need to start over, or if you need to kind of recalibrate. The problem is that doing this when both of these are retrograde is going to be very kind of discombobulated and confusing. So we are going to see some of that stuff that's going to be panning out there. So this will be the second square, and this will be at 22 degrees, both retrograde, both are not really at full capacity. We'll be just coming off of eclipse season in November, and planets are going to move into Sagittarius. In all Sag season, we'll see Sun, Mercury, Venus oppose Mars, square Neptune. And Sag is more like, this is the bigger picture. Here is the truth, right? And how it's challenging the narrative and a lot of walking things back in the media or rethinking conversations and issues, obviously, with honesty and clarity. And I think there's going to be this realization that there has been a lot of deception and there's been a lot of manipulation. We will then have a third square, and this is going to be around March 11th through the 14th of 2023. This will be the last square, and this will be setting up at 24 degrees. What's interesting, though, is that when we have this final square, obviously we see now Neptune is direct, Mars is direct, Saturn is now in Pisces, and Mercury and the Sun are in Pisces. So it's a Pisces party. I'm going to call it Pisces pandemonium. You know, lots of more isolating, hidden stuff, hidden agendas, dealing with releasing, letting go in good or bad ways. But when this final square is like perfecting, right? It'll actually go from 24 to 25 degrees. So from the 11th, then they square at 25. Then the Sun joins here. Okay, so Sun, Neptune, Mercury are all going to align, and they're going to square Mars. This is an interesting phase because we've got Mars that's finally opening up, coming into the square in a direct fashion. And it's all challenging anything that's being hidden and trying to kind of force or push the truth out. Unfortunately, Mars doesn't really have a lot of support. It's not making any aspects to anything. It's not making any aspects to anything. It doesn't quite have a sextile to Jupiter. Venus is changing signs. You have a Venus-Mars sextile. That's about it. I anticipate that come the beginning of the year, there is going to be either some new pandemic, or there is going to be some new health scare, or some new reason to go into separation, seclusion, isolation. Saturn is not entirely happy being in Pisces. I will say that. Saturn in the 12th isn't terrible, but Saturn in Pisces has the energy of suppression, depression, you know, isolation. And I can't really tell you what it's going to be, because we're going to have so many planets that are going to be in Pisces. And with that square to Mars, Mars is still the ruler of the South Node. So it is still saying there is this fight that's brewing between wanting to roam, be free, drive around, travel, communicate, and also what is being limited or shut down behind closed doors. Make no mistake, this will be anything that's going to do with censorship, and it's going to do with censorship of videos. And I wonder if there's going to be like more capabilities with technology to be able to detect certain words or certain pictures and other things that's really kind of keeping certain global events from spreading and getting out there. Just being an American who lives in the States, like I can tell you we don't see everything. Like, we really don't see everything that's going on in the world. We don't. You guys have to go looking for it. Like, this stuff going on where they're still having lockdowns in parts of Asia, things that are going on in terms of the riots taking place in Iran. Like, we're not seeing this stuff. We have to go looking for it. Like, our news channels are a joke. All you're hearing is the same filtered kind of bullshit that's coming out with stuff in regards to politics, elections, and a fake, agenda that's going on now to push everybody to get electric vehicles and, buy into that new craze. So be careful with whose advice you buy in the midst of this. Realize that both because of the eclipses and finally when we come out of this Mars square Neptune, we're coming out of the fog. The fog is going to clear. Lower energy levels are going to lift. What you guys do with this Jupiter, Neptune, Pisces energy are you guys going to spiral and panic, and are you going to isolate yourselves, or are you going to learn to pray, have faith, hold space, connect to spirit, come up with a routine, know how to rest and recuperate and not be burning the candle at both ends and burning yourself out. These are the things that I want you guys to really be thinking about. Just some food for thought also. Before I close, I wanted to read to you guys from the Archetypal Universe, Ren Butler, just to get some romantic words, some beautiful words in regards to his take on Mars square Neptune. If you guys have this book, it's page 154. Mars square Neptune, the principles: spiritual and creative vitality, magnetic warmth and charisma, gentle and sensitive strength, gifts of compassionate action and enlightened non-action. Strange feelings of pointlessness, toxic blah, uncomfortable inner heat, potential for secret harmful actions, camouflaged desire. A gentle, sensitive strength, an open and flexible resilience, a capacity to go with the flow, softened ego energies, relaxed confidence, effortless, smooth strokes, an instinct for being rather than doing, inner radar and sensitivity, the path of least resistance, the ability to have an effect without arousing opposition. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. A feeling of synergy with others, gifts and compassionate action, right action, enlightened non-action. The ability to gently follow and stay with one's breathing, slow inhalations and exhalations, while maintaining the awareness of a still point behind the forehead. You must learn to be still in the midst of activity and be vibrantly alive in repose. The futility of war, the transmuting of aggression, dissolution of force, the active pacifist, passive resistance, soft martial arts, sensitive passion, a talent for swimming, a love for soaking in hot water. Something else that I was thinking about, and now that I'm seeing this, it kind of makes sense, but just like a harping on or fixation on things that you have done wrong, or people that you have hurt, or things that have gone on in the past that are kind of coming up for you. That can be a big theme. The potential to confuse people, the delusion of hurting others to wake them up, impulses towards holy war, active blaming, qualities of stealth and cunning, backstabbing and treachery, secret harmful actions, hidden enemies and infiltration, subtle spooky forms of aggression, shamanic energy battles and voodoo, creepy ghoulish desires, a sense of having committed harmful actions in the past, the recognition that every past action sticks with us like a covering of fluid, feelings of anguish and torment, debilitation and wasting away, identification with scoundrels, poisoning or problems with liquids. Force combined with Neptunian element of water. Sailing on rivers, soaking in hot springs, floating in inflatable boats. Neptune connected to waterfalls and sinking, planes crashing into oceans, cars driving into lakes, dissolving structures merged with Mars. Feeling bogged down. Yeah, that's the long and short of it. These archetypes help people to take a break from their usual martial or forceful approach to life, to go with the flow of emerging inner Mars energy. Mars-Neptune transits are an asset for clearing out leftover toxic womb memories or disturbances. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's going to affect everybody differently. I'm seeing some people who are just wiped out and they're just having to take time off. And being somebody who has a strong Neptune, I've realized that when that happens, it's like the universe telling you have to slow down, you have to take a break, right? Like we've seen this time and time again with people who have like health scares or some significant thing that happens in regards to like having to take time off to like recuperate and recover. That because our energies and how we're directing them and where we're going may not be actually in alignment with what we want or what we're hoping for or what we're dreaming for or visualizing. It may be really off of the glory, you know, path, right? I've seen this a lot in this last year. I'm still getting over Saturn square my Sun and my Mercury. I have my good days and my bad days, but I'm constantly losing my voice. Constantly, like every other couple days, to the point where when I'm not working, I'm not talking for the most part because I'm having to kind of keep my voice and take care of my voice. Nothing's wrong. For a while, I was like, is there something wrong with my thyroid? What's going on? Nope. It's just, you know, Saturn squaring my Sun, Mercury, telling me to shut up and not talk as much or not work as much. Which has been really interesting because it's put me in a position of going, okay, well, do I do the sessions or do I focus on creating the content, and how do I find ways to do both? So most days I'm trying to juggle that, but it's really kind of taught me to reserve my voice, to reserve my energy and put it towards things that really matter and not allow myself to get worried about the what if I don't have it or what if it doesn't come. And I'm just kind of like, well, if I'm meant to work today, I'm going to work today and I'm going to maintain my schedule, you know? Not much else I can do other than that. And part of it, I think, also is just with the Mars square Neptune is helping balance out energy levels for some people. People who have been way too lethargic, it can be putting a fire under their ass. For people who have been kind of overworking and slaving away and focusing too much on just grinding stuff out, it's helping them take a step back and balance out their energy levels. So with that being said, I will leave it at that. That is my food for thought on this Mars square Neptune. You guys have all of the dates. I hope that is helpful. I am in the process of putting together a couple videos for you guys, trying to do a eclipse video this week so you guys get a heads up on this eclipse that's coming up at the end of the month. I still have an eclipse webinar that will be happening this Sunday. It's going to be the 9th at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can check my links below if you want to join that webinar. We're going to talk all about the eclipses in depth. I'm going to give you guys all kinds of information and remedies and talk about how it's going to affect the 12 signs. If you want to join me, we're going to be doing that live. I'm also putting together a webinar, but it's going to be free. So I'm going to put it on the channel and talk to you guys about the Mars retrograde as well. So I'm working hard on some content for you. Hope you enjoy it. And let me know, how are you guys doing with this energy? How are you feeling? Do you already feel the Mars Neptune square? Do you have this aspect natally? And how does it play out for you? Leave me your comments below. Remember, sharing is caring. So if you want to give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. It'd be super helpful. It helps get into the algorithm and have more growth in the channel. Stay tuned for that Mars retrograde video that I'm going to do, talking to you guys all about that, and I'm going to take you through the 12 signs, okay? With that being said, enjoy the rest of your week. You guys take care.